Hi, everybody, and welcome to Celestial You. I'm here again with Nelly, and
Are you pointing the right way?
I am pointing the right way. If I point this way, it points to you, which right now you're on the side of my screen. But anyway, so I'm here with Nelly, my favorite shaman
Thank
and my
you.
personal shaman.
Honor.
So anyway, today we're going to be touching on subjects regarding um, the planet Mercury, which is their planet of thinking. We're going to be talking about manifestation and different techniques to manifest things. And we'll see if we get around to some other subjects as well. We're just going to see where we go. So,
And
hi, Nelly.
hi. I'm so excited for today because I think that astrology and the principles behind it really tie into just so many different things that I myself study. And we had a long conversation before this, and yeah, I mean, we just spent an hour talking about Mercury.
Yeah.
And the different laws of the universe, like visual, and tools like visualization. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say today.
Okay. Do you want me to start with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be really helpful.
Okay, cool. So, and I'll be putting out, along with this, I'll be putting out a blog post on Mercury and the basics of Mercury. I got a couple of requests from people to start teaching basics of astrology, and that's why I'm doing it. So I'm just going to just start out with this. So Mercury is the planet of your skills and your ability to do business. So this is a very relevant planet to our journey right now because we've entered into Leo season. And Leo is really the sign of self-expression. It's a sign of doing your independent types of business, even entrepreneurial pursuits. Leo is about when the sun is in Leo, particularly with Mercury, which is what's happening. And we're about to get a new moon in Leo. It really gives us this ability to start putting our ducks in a row, to start envisioning what our lifestyle will look like, how we're going to create in the world. And even if you're not ready to create or you don't know what you're going to create, this is the time to sort of get your Mercury aligned, because Mercury is one of the planets, one of the two planets of manifestation. So according to Gemini, the two planets that manifest are Mercury and Jupiter. So Mercury manifests into really all things. So in the Vedic system, Mercury is it goes Sun, Moon, Mars, and then Mercury. And so the Sun is our essence of who we are. The Moon is how we relate to other people. Mars is what we do. And Mercury is how we manifest. And we manifest through thinking. And so Mercury placements in your astrological chart have to do with how you think. And developing your Mercury is how you become more skilled. It helps you with investigation and experimentation. Looking at the placement of Mercury, what sign it's in, and what the actual house number it's in, tells you a lot about your own thinking. By understanding your own thinking, it gives you an understanding of what your strengths are. So Mercury is a planet that likes to keep things light and fun. So this placement in your chart is going to tell you a lot about what you think is funny, like what's funny to you, what you think is a good compromise, because Mercury's a friendly planet. This is how you come to an agreement with somebody. This is how you do, because it's a planet of business, has a lot to do with trade. And so how do you meet that person halfway, right? And depending on the placement you have, you're going to employ different tactics with regards to this. And this is helpful if you're growing a business. So Mercury has a crafty way of saying things that need to be said, and the placement will tell you a lot about what you think is, it's funny. It's also about the rulership of that Mercury. So meaning if, for example, my Mercury is in Taurus, then the ruler of Mercury is Venus. So the way that I'm going to be talking is going to be a lot to do with the rulership of my Mercury, and also the placement of that Lord in whatever house it is. So, and I can give you a couple examples as we go. So because it's a manifestation planet, any house that has Mercury in it is capable of manifestation. So Nelly has been kind of generous enough to allow me to talk about her astrological placements as well as mine, for example. And
no judgment, people.
No judgment, please. No, I'm just kidding. So Mercury for Nelly and I, we both have Mercury in our 8th house. And so that means that we're capable of manifesting 8th house things. 8th house things are particular to the unseen world. So, you know, it's funny because like before this, Nelly and I were kind of talking about how it is to break out of our previous job, previous roles in society and go into a new role in society, and what courage it takes and what would make somebody successful. Well, according to Shaman, the ancient astrologer, Mercury placed in a sign, and particularly if it's in decent dignity, as long as it's not debilitated, you know, it can manifest whatever that sign does. And so for you, Nelly, that's a really good thing because that's an Aries. So that's independence, entrepreneurship, and relative to the 8th house, which is the house of the unseen, the occult. So
awesome.
So there you go. Like we were literally talking about this before we got on. And Nelly was like, oh, you know, how do we know that things are going to work out? And it's like, well,
you just have
this is one of the indicators.
Yeah. And we were talking about like doubling down on your beliefs when things go bad. And we'll get into that later, I'm sure.
I really think that's important. And I want to talk about, there's a thing with faith, which is the other manifestor, which is Jupiter. And then, so Jupiter is the faith-based manifestation planet. And Mercury is the thinking manifestation planet. Okay, but for now, I want to go over a couple more attributes of Mercury so that we can all understand more about this planet before we jump in. Okay, so I'll just quickly go over the nature of Mercury. So like I said before, if your Mercury is with a cruel planet, it becomes a cruel planet. So what does that mean? Like both Nelly and I have Mercury with Mars. I actually have my Mercury with Sun and Mars. And what that means is that Mercury conforms to the other planets in their modality. So if they are cruel, this Mercury will also be cruel, which is kind of tough because what that means is that sometimes when you have these types of placements, you will find that your mind and your thoughts are not necessarily friendly. And you really have to work at understanding that you are not your thoughts. Because sometimes your thoughts are going to be in alignment with what you truly should be doing. And sometimes they're going to represent more difficult or potentially negative thought patterns. Okay. And that's okay, because we learn from these cruel planets. They put pressure on us to evolve our thinking. Okay. So as you kind of like grow in life, you become more adapted to it, and you learn which thoughts are constructive and which aren't. And that's really what you have to do with your Mercury placement. Now, if your Mercury is with a Samya or gentle planet, such as if it's with Jupiter, or if it's with Venus, or even the growing moon, the waxing moon, then you would see that Mercury is actually kind. So your thoughts are going to be more gentle thoughts. You may have just like a gentle manner with people, and you may not be as hard-edged. Now, now Nelly and I have our Mercury with Mars, so we tend to be more direct. We can confront things, and it's not necessarily bad, but it just means that we're not afraid to like say what it is and like confront things. But we need both types of people in the world, right? Those ones that are like gentle, compassionate, they communicate very softly and like through these kinds of means. And then we need the people who are like not afraid to say the truth and not afraid to really get down to brass tacks. So
the hard edge people.
What's that?
The hard edge people.
The hard edge people. We're hard edge
sharp.
People.
I think it's sharp. Actually, Ida, as you're talking, I just read a quote today, actually, by William James, who wrote a famous book, The Varieties of Religious Experience. And he talks about the once born and twice born people. I don't know if you recall that. And this is what it kind of reminds me of. I don't know if it reminds you of that. And the once born people, as you know, they appear predisposed to happiness, happy thinking, right? And then there's the twice born people, which I think of myself as one of those who, he says, those people whose existence is little more than a series of zigzags. And, there's inconsistencies, wayward impulses interrupt their most deliberate plans, and their lives are one long drama of repentance in the effort to repair misdemeanors and mistakes. That's so interesting. And it's not a bad thing, right? It's just calling upon ourselves to reprogram our thinking, don't you think?
It's interesting that you say that, because in a lot of the ancient Vedic texts, they refer to twice born, once born, and I'm gonna have to look at that, because now I want to know more about it. I don't think I fully understood the meaning of it until what you just said now. So that's really interesting. Generally speaking, there tends to be a certain amount of grit within a chart, right? And the people who have what you would constitute as more difficult placements, they tend to be able to like confront things, and it seems to be like somewhat of a struggle going on. But Mars is the planet of overcoming your obstacles, and Mercury is thinking. So as you progress in life, you overcome your previous thought patterns, you overcome your previous challenges to manifestation. This is what, and you can't do that with this like once born mentality. Like you have to be like willing to be like, okay, pedal to the metal, let's go. Let's see what we can learn today. So that's really interesting, Nelly. I kind of want to go back and look at my notes on that subject. Okay, so I broke it down in terms of Mercury being high vibe and Mercury being low vibe. So if you have a high vibe Mercury, and by this I mean like if you are in a good emotional state and you're processing well, the placement of your Mercury is going to give you intelligence. It's going to give you a certain communication style that is friendly, investigative, that gains through trial and error. And it's also going to help you differentiate from what you do like, what you don't like. So the name of the game in manifestation is when you know what you don't like, you know what you do like. And so by experiencing contrast, if you were at a high vibration at that moment, you can manifest based off of what you don't want, manifesting what you do want. And so if you're a low vibration or you're in a difficult Mercury placement within your chart, or if you're not processing your emotions well, the Mercury planet can be responsible for feeling like you're not getting your fair share in life. And it can be this way in particular, depending on the placements in your chart, but also if Mercury and the moon are afflicted within your chart, you could struggle from mental illness issues. And so Mercury is an important planet with regards to not just in the best way we can manifest from suffering, right? Life is in part suffering. So you find out what you don't want, you can manifest what you do want. If you're working well with the energies of Mercury in your chart, you can do this readily. If it becomes too much or your Mercury is afflicted, you may fall into the category of struggling with mental illness. And so we did a previous episode on depression and what that means in shamanism and what that means in different spiritual context. And, we're aware that when your vibration is low, you can experience negative thoughts, right? And so the position of your Mercury will sort of explain what kinds of thought patterns that may or may not be good. And looking at that, learning from the position of your birth chart Mercury is how you kind of can deal with your own mind. Now, the character of Mercury in general is that Mercury does like to play by the rules. Mercury is a planet that is friendly, humorous, and fair. So depending on the placement of your Mercury, you'd be more or less these attributes. And also Mercury is, it is the planet of, if it is your rising sign is ruled by Mercury, you're going to have golden complexion, being able to tan, and you will have well-proportioned body parts. So that's another thing that Mercury can do. It also rules our skin and our cell membranes. So, and another thing that Mercury does is it helps you have a more varied diet. So if you are in a period of time where you're running a Mercury Dasa, Mercury time frame of your life, the timing is often related or will be related to a certain planet. So if you're running the time frame of Mercury, you're going to find yourself eating better, more variety in your diet, which usually equates to having a better body and better health. So, and also, this is kind of odd, but Mercury is responsible for the taste of umami. So each of the planets is responsible for a certain taste element. So there's that. And then also the age of development. So Mercury, because it's about learning, communication, thinking, that kind of thing. The age of development of that planet is from 3 to 12. So it's before puberty, but from 3 till 12 is when you do all your primary learning. And that's when you're really, if you have an afflicted Mercury, you may suffer from learning disabilities. And if you don't have one, you may be a fast learner, or you may learn languages easily as a child or something like that. But this time frame is from 3 to 12. The age of maturity is 32. So by the time you mature age 32, hopefully your patterns of thinking are mature, and your ability to communicate. But what you don't have to be 100% knowledgeable about your thinking or your mentality at that age. It's just, we do have certain ages where the planets will mature. Let's see what else. Oh, I just briefly want to talk about 2 positions of Mercury that can be challenging. And one is if you have a debilitated Mercury. So what does that mean? So if your Mercury is in Pisces, particularly within 0 to 15 degrees of Pisces, you can have what's called a debilitated Mercury. Now, what is that? I mean, is it really that bad? Well, usually if it's between 14 degrees and 15 degrees, that's called deep debilitation. And that can be quite difficult because people with this placement in Pisces, when it's in deep debilitation, can have a difficult time expressing themselves. The Pisces is a very esoteric sign. It's a sign of, not being of this world, of freedom from the world. And when your communication is in that sign, Mercury's in that sign, it just means that sometimes when you talk about things, you're talking big picture, you're talking subconscious concepts. And a lot of times people don't understand them because you're speaking directly from your subconscious. So if you do have Mercury in Pisces, what helps with this placement is often if you can harness a lot of your intuition and work with that before you speak. And so because you're going to be a very sensitive person, and you're going to be a gentle, perhaps even a gentle communicator, depending on the rulership of your Mercury, then you may need to really deepen your spirituality before you can effectively communicate to others. You may also need more time to decompress before you can communicate or think or collect your thoughts. And that's okay. That's just one position that people have a more difficult time with. Now, it's not all about the position of your Mercury because the rulership also matters. And so Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. So it depends on how strong is your Jupiter. If your Jupiter is really strong, then you can overcome these pieces as well. So all of this is kind of nuanced and specific to your chart. The other piece I want to talk about is Mercury in Cancer. So if you do have Mercury in Cancer, Cancer is a sign of really our inner emotional landscape. And when Mercury is there, we tend to have an emotional way of thinking. So it's kind of a very watery, because Cancer is a water sign, it's a very watery way of thinking. And sometimes it can be emotionally reactive. So your communication might be reactive. And that's just, going to be the case from 0 to 5 degrees of Cancer. But if it's after 5 degrees, it wouldn't be as bad. And so you can see people with Mercury in Cancer, and on the good side, because Mercury is also responsible for hands and healing to some degree, people with Mercury in Cancer can have the ability to heal others. And so to every position, there is good and bad. And I just wanted to talk about the dignity of Mercury affecting our ability to think in life. Those are the only pieces. There's more to it, but I think that's enough for today. A lot. Thoughts on Mercury?
Thoughts on Mercury? Yeah, I was just thinking again about humor and if that Mercury and Mars is responsible for my love of sarcasm. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, it is. So I wanted to say, because you have Mars, which is in its own sign of Aries, and Mars in Aries is a very direct, quippy kind of influence on Mercury. And so Mercury being the communicator and the humor is like, it's going to be very quick and very quippy, which is actually kind of funny. You know, people with this kind of edgy humor there's like comedians that have this, and it's actually quite funny. And Mars being in its own sign, really, Mars enjoys being direct. And so it's kind of like this, like you can say little barbs, but you can also say just like funny, direct things that and interject them, pop them in, kind of speak.
Interesting. And what comedian do you know hasn't been depressed in their life? I mean, I think that's like the funniest thing that
right?
We talk about, you know, like perhaps Mercury not being in a friendly place, but it does. Maybe there's an indication there that you do rise up or have the opportunity to from those places of discomfort and depression, and also become a unique person out of those situations, or at least have the potential to. That's really cool. Thanks, Ida. I didn't know everything about Mercury, you know, obviously not.
Yeah, I actually have Mars with Mercury as well. And I have been told that that I have a certain kind of humor, but mine is in Taurus. And so Taurus is it's a slower kind of humor. I don't know. It's not as like fast as yours. Yours is like super fast.
Well, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, I have liked dark humor, or, you know, I don't have to get into it. It's probably not that interesting.
I think it's like, it's more because it's in Aries, it makes you more like silly.
Yeah, that too. I love a good like fart joke, or you know.
Yeah, exactly. Versus like in Taurus, we like to have sophisticated, like sophisticated puns or sophisticated like things that we say. So then we're slower about building them up and like telling a story and like, oh, that's funny, you know, like versus yours is just like bing, bang, boom. And like, and it's also just, you know, the way that you communicate is you're not going to skirt around the issue, which is helpful because, you know, yours is in the 8th house, mine's in the 8th house. We're basically talking about occult things, and we have to be somewhat direct. So having that Mars with the Mercury allows us to be like, hey, we're going to talk about things that are kind of like uncomfortable to some people, but we're just going to do it.
Mm-hmm. That we do.
Yep.
With compassion, of course.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, that's all part of the healing experience, by the way.
It is.
Like how the story is told, you know? Like, there's a lot of like lessons in that, in how there's power behind words. And also you can hex people with your words. Well, let's not go there right now. But, you know, it's just kind of like, so like, what? Now we're off on some tangent. I'm off on a tangent, but
no, I like it. Actually, it's not a tangent because what you're saying is words matter.
they do. And one of the things in my practice that I see, or if I do a healing journey for someone, I don't necessarily disclose the imagery I see, because that's not going to be helpful. And you put it in the person's mind. For instance, if I do an extraction and I see barbed wire, for example, and then you put it in the person's mind, if you say, I saw barbed wire, that they have that still, or they did, and that's what they visualize. And I guess it is related, because we're going to talk about visualization. But then if that's what people fixate on and people do that, then they're not the healing experience is compromised. There's no integrity to it. Versus you're healed now. And that's,
there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect now.
Yeah. I mean, and that's also, a whole different aspect, I think, of like living life, is to view people in their genius and their divine perfection, which is what I love to help people do. As opposed to, I extracted all this crap from you. Like, that's not going to be helpful.
No.
Like, I'm leaving my office like, oh no.
Well, so it's interesting because both of us having Mars in the 8th house, we can see the obstacles and we can heal them. So that's good. That's like what makes us strong. But, having Mars with Mercury as a cruel planet, what it does to us is we tend to focus our thoughts on what is wrong. And so unlearning from our standpoint, we have to unlearn that for ourselves.
The way I understand it is being able to see both perspectives.
Yeah.
So in every situation, I can see good and bad and gray. And sometimes, we live in a society also where we're not taught how to think. And so that can be very paralyzing.
Yeah.
To know that there's good and bad in everything. So then what are you going to focus on? And that's where manifestation and visualizing comes in. I
do agree. Like, the reason why I'm harping on our positioning is just because it's us. But like, I had a client who had, if you have a paired with another malefic planet like Saturn, well, Saturn is our fears. So you can just imagine to have your fears on your planet of thinking. So then that person really has to conquer their fears in life before they can actually up level. And one of the things that Saturn does is it helps us remove the garbage. So within each of these things, like each of these quote unquote cruel planets, you actually have the potential to become more effective than somebody who has just like gentle planets in gentle placements. So, like you said, you have to learn your lesson that like, okay, just because I'm a Mars with Mercury person doesn't mean I have to be like, okay, here's the nail and just hammer it in and be like, this is the problem. Like, we can't do that. We can't do that.
The gentle people, they make me happy. Like, that's who I want to emulate. The people who can just be like, oh, whatever. I'm happy because I have to be. Like, there's no other choice but to be happy. And that used to drive me crazy. I mean, not so much anymore. But in the past, like when I was younger and trying to learn how to live life, I was like, how are you so happy? Like, that drives me crazy.
It's like those people have to deal with the fact that they repress a lot because they're not dealing with things. So with Mars, we take action, right? So Sorry, I'm just changing my light here. Sorry. So with Mars, we take action. And when people don't have that, they may think a lot of things, but how much of the time are they implementing what they're thinking on? So it's just like, you could end up being a dreamer, like you could whatever, but like at the end of the day, it's like we're really looking to concretize what we think of and we dream of. So that's important too. Like a couple things that we were talking about with before this about manifestation and how that occurs. Like we are constantly manifesting through our minds, and the universe in many respects is a mental universe. So first we think of things in our brains and then we manifest it in reality. That's why so many people do like vision boards, or I think you were going to share with us a couple like techniques of what you could do.
Oh, just one. I mean, but I'll let you finish your thoughts.
Okay. Then but I want you to go into that, but I wanted to kind of lay the framework for that. So many times we can be thinking about negative things or what the problem is, but you often cannot manifest from that place. So there needs to be a process by which you identify the things that you don't want, and you create a list of things or attributes or feelings or descriptions that you do want. And so a lot of times in the human condition, we tend to perseverate on what is wrong. And from there, we can only attract more things that go wrong. And so there is this need right now in particular to shift your focus. And so if you find yourself thinking about things that are wrong, it's like you can, number one, if you perseverate too long on things that are going wrong in your life, you can actually lower your vibration, and you can't manifest from a place of low vibration. So that's the other piece to this. So if you're kind of focused on the missing pieces in your life or the pieces that give you bad emotions, you can't get to a place where you can manifest what you do want in life. So there needs to be some effort on a daily basis. And like Nelly was talking about maintenance, right? It's like if you're too much in the negative, you may need to go to a shaman and have a healing session, right? Because there may be other factors as to why you're stuck in a negative place, right? But beyond that, or you may need to go to therapy, or you may have those things. But even every one of us, like on a daily basis, we have a choice. We have a choice to think about the problem or either create space for the solution or direct our minds to think about new possibilities, creation, and new ways of dealing with issues that don't focus on the problem. They focus either on the solution or how we will feel when it is solved. So in this process of directing your thoughts, it's like, I was actually trying to teach a friend of mine this the other day, which is like, who is dealing with relationship issues in her life. And it was like, well, we know all of this. We know that this relationship isn't working for you. So knowing that, we don't need to be convinced within ourselves or within our friendships that the relationship isn't working. if it's not working, speaking about the problem more just makes it worse. Once you've identified that something isn't working, you are actually okay to stop right there and do some sort of manifestation technique to get what you would want to be different from that. So once you understand what you don't want, you can understand what you do want. And there's a couple steps that I recommend prior to doing a manifestation. And one is you must manifest from a high vibration. So you have to do a clearing, a meditation, a walk, a grounding. You have to hug a tree. You've got to like get your, go into the garden, spend some time, decompress, get out of the negativity and back into a high vibration. From that point, you can actually do many things to manifest. One of the things I tell people is just take your notebook or your diary and start writing all the positive things that you've learned that you want in positive terms that would be different than your reality. You can also write down some of the things you like about in your reality that you want to keep. And so you can just write those out. And part of that too is describing the way that it makes you feel. Like, I want a relationship that is reciprocal and that is that feels really positive, that we're encouraging each other, that blah, 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 whatever it is that you felt you didn't have in your previous relationship, or even in your current relationship that you want to manifest. So this is just like one example of what I tell people to do. And I want to give you guys one example of one that I did a couple weeks ago that I think I can share. So a couple weeks ago, I wanted to manifest better gut health because I've always had gut issues and I've always sort of struggled with that. I feel a lot of my emotions in my gut, and I just got to a place before, like maybe 3 weeks ago, where I just accepted what was. So I think that this is step one for me for manifestation, is accept what is. So I was just accepting my body the way that it was, and that it was reacting to different energies. It was reacting to different foods. It was reacting a lot, right? And I was like, well, if this doesn't change at all in my life, I'm just going to accept it. So I just went into a phase of like raising my vibration from fighting it, which is a low vibe, to a higher vibration of acceptance. So once you get to acceptance, now you've said radically, I don't care. I'm detached from this. And like, I don't identify with any disease names. I don't identify with the symptoms. I'm just accepting this. So once you get to the state of acceptance, your vibration is high enough that you can do a meditation and bump yourself even higher to a place of, either intelligence or love or peace or enlightenment. So once you do that meditation, and I did this, I didn't even do this to try to get rid of the gut issue. I was just doing it to see if I could do it. And I wrote out a huge manifestation of all these things that I wanted, one piece of which was the gut health. And I noticed that the very next day after I wrote all this stuff out, and here's the other piece. I decided to, after I wrote it out, I decided to let go of it entirely. So I write out everything I want. I've already said it. I don't need to go to Nelly and be like, Nelly, my life sucks, and and keep talking about the problems, right? Because I've already accepted it. I've written what I do want. And now I can let that go and let the universe deliver it to me. So what I did is I said, well, I've already accepted the way it is. And I wrote out a manifestation. In my manifestation, I wrote out things like, I have a flat stomach and my stomach is so calm and I feel secure in my stomach. And like, I wrote out these things, like even like the feeling of it is, I can digest anything. And I get nutrients from all varieties of food with no problem. Like, like things that you had probably spent years saying the opposite of. I was now writing what I wanted it to be. And so after I did it, I kind of said, okay, I let it go. And literally the next day, I noticed my stomach is perfect, like perfect. And I had written other things that I had wanted. It wasn't all about my gut health, but because I wasn't tied to anything, I didn't have any resistance on the subject, I was able to manifest the gut health right away. And so that's how I was able to do a basic manifestation. So I want to kind of like have Nelly share us another technique, but this is just one that I tried that worked.
That's really beautiful, Ida. And, in listening to your story, I do recognize you as someone who is very aware and in tune with their wants and needs, and has, it's really obvious that you've taken a lot of time to study, which is how you came up with these techniques to be able to manifest and write about it in a very specific way so that this manifested quickly. And I do want to honor that about you and just like applaud you for that, because it's really beautiful, honestly. In my own practice, this is an issue that comes up a lot. And what I love to do in the beginning of a session is to see exactly what's going on with someone, but then also provide solutions, very specific solutions for spirit for that particular client that I'm seeing at that time. Because there's so many different techniques out there, and we do hear a lot of different things. Like, for instance, meditation. It's been around since before Buddha, right? Thousands of years. But nowadays, when you look at meditation, it reminds me of like one time I went to a meditation and we weren't sitting at all. And my perspective of meditation was vipassana, or, you sit and you do observations, but this is like someone guiding us the whole time and talking to us, and we're standing and walking around a room and we're making a weird spiral of bodies. And I was like, what's happening? I was very disturbed. It didn't work.
Were you also on shrooms at the time? Or
no, I was a very sober. Wait, yes, I was very sober at that time.
I'm just joking.
And it
might have made more sense if you were not sober.
It was a meetup. And it was at a therapist's office, who I think she also taught. But and then you have guided meditations, and maybe like meditation is a buzzword, but there's so many different types now. And of course, transcendental, when you say, a mantra the whole time, which I like, but you talk to a Buddhist purist like my dad, and he would probably think that that's absolute nonsense.
Oh, I really like mantras, especially, too, when you have sort of a difficult Mercury, like you and I kind of have a little bit of we want an action-oriented mental process. Mm-hmm. It's nice to have a mantra because it gives you an action. So depending on your Mercury placement, I think mantras could be helpful for people with a very busy mind or needing to do that.
I like it. I discovered it through a lot of trial and error on my own through my self-discovery process. Actually, at that time, I was working a really stressful job, with a really stressful situation, and that really helped pull me through.
Yes.
It's just.
Have you ever done because I sometimes just chant Om.
Yeah, I've done that as well.
Or the other one I use is Om Mani Padme Hum. Mm-hmm. I use that one all the time, and it's the Dalai Lama talks about that one, but it's basically one you can do for releasing things. Especially if in the case where you are really hooked on to the problem and you want to like get out of that, it's a good one because you can just like say it over and over again and then release it, and bob yourself back up to a higher vibration. And once you're there, then you go grab your journal or you do your other manifestation techniques. But as long as you have that, you know, you're too stuck, you got to do something to get unstuck, whether it's whatever meditation.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. There's like a lot of different techniques out there. And then, you know, the one that you're talking about, there's another one where you incorporate mudras. So Sata Nama, you know.
Yeah, that one's really good too. I like that one. And especially if you need like a tactile thing to keep your like mind from straying from it, or the breath work.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not for everyone, you know what I mean? Like, and also there's just so much trial and error that this is like an offering I have for people, is to just go ahead and go in. And for me personally, you know, something that was offered to me through a teacher of mine was a practice called, and I think my dogs are now awake and they're making noise. I'm sorry about that. They're like, one of them's really young. She's only 8 months old, so you might hear her.
That's okay.
So is the spirit canoe. I was going to talk about the spirit canoe. And so I'm just going to describe it a little bit first. It's a common practice amongst peoples of the Northwest coast of North America, in the Northwest Amazon, in Australia, Indonesia, where you do a journey together in a canoe. And the one particular journey that I did, or technique that I did with my teacher, was she put us all in a canoe and we went forward in time 3 years to the life we really want. Now, before this, I didn't really know or have a clear, crystal idea of like my life purpose, for instance. Like, you can tell me in my astrological chart, it says that I'm spiritual and have gifts, but what does that look like? You know, and what am I going to do about self-directing like that path forward? Because you talk about shamanism, there's so many different kinds. There's weather shamans and healers and hexers, and you know, like,
I didn't even know about those weather shamans. Those are,
yeah, I mean, it's a
so
thing.
you talked about it that one episode.
I mean, you can look it up. I think it's been studied in like the Stargate project, or actually in Russia, like they will summon shamans to like bring rains, if you know, just
yeah.
like, it's really interesting. And in a book about Mongolian shamans, there's a discussion about like they brought 400 different shamans around the whole country, and they changed the weather affecting only one rock. So rain, hail, whatever, only on
Whoa!
which I would have loved to see that, to be honest.
I know. I bet you would have. You could have participated on the experiment.
I don't know about that, but in plant spirit medicine, there's so many different kinds, and so part of our journey is to like figure out what our gifts are, but then also, you know, what will that look like? And we, of course, co-collaborate with spirit, but ultimately we're in the bodies who are doing all the manifesting, right? We're doing all the thinking, we're doing all the will, we're doing all the physical work that is like brought forward by, you know, our soul, the essence that gives us the ability to live and have will to live. And then we channel spirit through that place. And I just think it's really beautiful, the practice that you have. And I'm just going to add another one to the mix about the spirit canoe, of really visualizing and getting a very clear picture of where you want to be in 3 years' time. And by the way, like, for instance, making a business, being an entrepreneur, on average, it takes 3 years.
Yeah.
To really like get that whole thing wrapped up all together.
Yeah, I always joke that if it was God, he just walks and the ground just like comes up under him and he's like boop 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 boop, just walking, and it's just happening, and this beautiful ground just comes up to meet him. But like in human terms, it's a gradual process. And yeah,
I mean, it can be faster, like for you, for instance, with your health, like that manifested immediately. And I've noticed in my own life, I've manifested certain jobs immediately, but these are things that, it just depends. They say, we plant spiritual seeds and we don't know the gestation period.
Yeah.
And how long, it's a growing and learning process as well. You went through your process of then acceptance and then, and then help.
Yeah, like before when I tried to manifest it, which I have, it was just like the couple things that I did, I feel like that were, I don't want to say wrong, but I want to say less effective, was I knew that visualizing the way I would look and feel would help me to manifest it. But I had never before come to a place of 100% acceptance with it. Because, when you have like disease and things like that, a lot of times people either identify with their pain body, or they identify with the disease, or it becomes a part of their identity. And really, they become sort of like they don't know what they would do if they didn't have this thing, right? This problem, right? And so it seemed like the key piece was at least just coming to a place of radical acceptance. Like, hey, if this never changes, I'm just going to accept it. And like, I'd never done that before. And really, I did that by accident. Like, I just felt that way right before it happened, right before I did a manifestation. So I didn't do it on purpose, but I do think now looking back, like, oh, that's why there's a couple things. I feel like the radical acceptance of what is. If you're fighting what is, you can't create from that place. So it's like, first accept what is, and then do your manifestation technique. So I want to know more about the canoe technique.
Oh, the canoe. So
yeah.
I think the canoe is really great. Like, there's a few things that I can think of, but for instance, as a group, you want to do something together with your family, or, as a community together, create this beautiful ritual or ceremony together, or just, on your individual level, like, so my dogs are getting really, do you hear that?
That's okay.
Do you hear? They're fighting. So like play fighting, but anyways,
it's okay. Other people have dogs as well. So we'll understand. But go ahead.
Oh, so distracting. So for me, it was the very specific thing of, what do you want in life? And I think that for at least for me, and I'm guessing other people out there, that's very hard to really be very specific about. And sometimes no amount of writing things down or vision boards or however you want to be oriented, or someone tells you how to be oriented, can really like help that, because we're so bound by our circumstances and the material world that we have right before us, that it's really difficult to come from that place where you have it already. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to really believe that you are healthy.
Yeah.
To then manifest health.
And that's the other thing. That's so true, because the language you use when you manifest is very important. It has to be present tense. I am healthy. I have XYZ. I have a flat stomach. I can digest anything. It's like, we want you to lose your head a little bit on this one. Just let go of it. So it's funny because you're manifesting with Mercury, with your thoughts, but you have to disengage with reality and
And
create a new reality.
It's interesting because so often we're bound by our circumstances.
Yeah.
And, I was just telling you, like when I was like a while ago, when I was thinking about a job, I wasn't very specific about it. So I remember one time I manifested this job like really quickly. I was traveling. I was in Southeast Asia. I went to a conference in Manila, and I walked into this building that was beautiful, had marble floors and filtered water and air. And people were talking about high-minded things like policy for, developing countries in Asia for clean water and electricity and renewable energy. And I had this thought like, I would like to work here. And then I kind of let it go. I didn't really think about it. And I happened at that very conference, someone shook my hand, was introduced to her, and she offered me a job. I wasn't specific about the person who would offer me the job. And that got me into a lot of trouble for a couple, So this is kind of like the Spirit Canoe is just kind of a technique to really look deep into your heart of what do you really want. Absent all of your circumstances, don't even think about how you're going to get there, what money you have right now, what people are telling you no. You're just there with Spirit to just see what your potential is in 3 years' time. So I don't know if it's appropriate to do this exercise together. I don't know. Maybe
right now.